Good morning, everybody. I'm sports psychologist Dr. Andrew Jacobs. Thanks for joining us here on our live broadcast from Sports Radio 810 WHB. And joining me today will be Danni, Wysocki, my partner. We'll be talking about youth sports today. We'll be doing our second live video stream podcast today. You know, I've been on the air here for 35 years, the last 25 years here at Sports Radio 810 WHB, and we're now doing our second video podcast, and you can watch online on LinkedIn and YouTube. Check us out because we're going to talk about a great topic today. We're going to talk about youth sports. So, Danni, how are you this morning?
Hey, good morning, Doc, from a beautiful, sunny Michigan, Detroit, Michigan. We are going to the Tigers game later with my 4- and 3-year-old daughter. So, you gotta get that point of entry as sports fans early on. So we do that through Pause the Mascot and free face painting on Sunday.
Now, is your husband going to catch a foul ball?
My father is visiting us from Venezuela, and baseball's a pretty big deal. World Baseball Classic champions. So if there's anyone who is going to catch a foul ball, it'll be him.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the video this week of a dad holding his infant child catching a foul ball in the stands, and didn't drop his daughter, just grabbed the ball and sat down. It was pretty funny. So
I'll raise that up, and probably my husband will be holding a beer and catch it within the beer.
That's even better. Well, it's great talking to you. You know, this is our second live broadcast. I love the fact you're willing to do this with me, and we're going to do more of these. You know, I have been on the air here for so long, and doing a video broadcast is the new thing. So I'm glad you're joining us today. And we're going to talk about a great topic. And before I get into it, Danni, last week on the show, because we're going to talk about youth sports today. And last week, I talked about two scenarios that happened in youth baseball. One was in Idaho, a situation where a high school umpire had to kick a dad who was the coach out of a game because he was arguing with him about the music coming from the other dugout. And the guy got belligerent and they had to kick him out. The other situation, which happened to be, ironically, just a few miles away from our studio, was a Memorial Day baseball tournament for 11-year-olds. And I want to get your opinion on this. It was for 11-year-olds, but one team's pitcher was 12. Okay. So he's a 12-year-old playing on 11 and under team. And in between innings, he came to his dad, who was the coach, and said, I'm going to throw the ball into the other dugout. So the dad said, there'll be consequences for that. He didn't tell him, you can't do that. Sit down, you're out of the game. He said, it'll be consequences. Well, the kid did it. Subsequently, the dad has been banned for life from coaching, and the young man suspended for five years from playing youth baseball. I want to get your thoughts on that before we get into what we're going to get into today, which is related to all this.
Yeah, youth sports is so emotional, highly charged because there is so much passion there. I do want to say in regards to the umpire clip in Iowa, justice for Gen Z, or justice for, I guess in this case, you would be Gen Alpha. But I mean, there's so much negativity, and it's very easily, as a millennial, and I know boomers went through it, it's always the youth and where the values are and making those right decisions. So to see a young man step up like that and to do the right thing was so inspiring and so encouraging, and one of those feel-good stories that we love about sports. And we'll get into it when we talk about we discuss the private equity involvement in sports and seeing that disruption right there across these sports that we're seeing. We're only going to see more of these stories where it's emotionally charged and that passion there. And you do want to see leaders step up, how we saw in the case of Iowa.
Right. And the whole situation comes down to this. Youth sports is supposed to be about having fun, learning skills, and enjoying the atmosphere. But the money that's gotten involved in this now, I mean, the situation that happened here in Kansas City was a tournament, and it was between teams from Oklahoma and Nebraska who traveled here, 11-year-olds traveling here to play in a tournament. So the money, obviously, that's being spent, first of all, on coaching, on traveling, on hotels, on food, and the tournament entrance, it's a lot of money. So I've talked for years on this show about how money is ruining youth sports. And youth sports, you and I both have talked about this before. There's an incredible number of kids dropping out by age 11 and 12. So it's close to 70% because it's not fun anymore. The money's ruining it. And where's the fairness? Because all kids don't get to play sports anymore. It's the kids basically where there's money available.
Well, you're not going to like what we're going to talk about in the story that I thought that was really interesting pertaining to your interest and the Venn diagram of my interest from the sports business side, but private equity's involvement in sports and this trend that we've been seeing in the last few years here. And I know that there is a proposed federal bill called Let the Kids Play Act to limit private equity firms' involvement and putting some regulations on when they have to divest in youth sports. But when I was pulling at these numbers, when you talk about the money is ruining kids' sports, some of the numbers that I was looking at last night said there's $30 billion annually that continues to grow within private equity across youth sports, an 8 to 10% increase per year. And one thing that I found that was really interesting is that's a 46% increase since 2019. We talk about inflation and how much the cost of eggs, of milk has increased. I mean, what about youth sports? 46% increase since 2019. And what does that mean for the future of sports? And again, for enrollment and getting kids to be involved.
No, it's messed up. And the part of the problem is if you don't have money, your kids aren't going to be able to play. And we've gotten to the point, like I said, teams traveling at 8, 9, 10 years of age, all this money invested in this. Where's the fairness for the kids in the inner cities? Where's the fairness for the kids that have parents don't have the money? And so it's skewed out of control.
Well, I think what's encouraging about, and again, it's just a proposed law, legislation hasn't been passed, and we were talking a little bit about in our pre-production call about how a lot of these are going to be dependent state by state, I think sport by sport as well. But the federal law that was introduced is that it's going to force private equity firms to divest from youth sports within 2 years. Now that's quick for from a PE standpoint with all these quick flips that they want to do to see that return on their investment. But 2 years from a youth sports standpoint, that I think is a very, very small window. And you want to see that long-term investment in our kids. I mean, 2 years, that's 2 seasons. And you know how things can go within youth sports. It is that one thing can go wrong in a season and it can sort of spiral. We see it at the youth sports level, but then also certainly at the professional. And is that enough time? Should that window be widened?
Well, I want my producer Tristan to jump in here because there's a story he came across from Scott Van Pelt that relates to all this. So Tristan, go ahead and jump in.
Love SCP.
Yes.
Yes. This morning on ESPN Radio, Scott Van Pelt jumped in with an advertisement advertising the new ESPN and Disney initiative called Take Back Sports. It's a campaign partnered with the Every Kid Sports, creating the Every Kid Sports Pass. This initiative is produced by Disney, and it's $5 million that ESPN will be aiming to shift youth sports away from hyper-competitive or expensive travel leagues and bringing it back to a community-focused, accessible play. For ages specifically 3 to 7, it can be older depending on viability and applications, but typically each student will be given about $150 for their league fees and qualifying families.
What do you think about that, Danny?
Oh, I mean, if there's anyone who can take on this and make that change, it's Disney. I mean, the power of the mouse, power of ESPN, and that Disney. So that term, to bring it back to my background, since we've got the doc and the professor here. I teach sports media at the University of Michigan. Go Blue! I know you're big Crow country down there.
Rock Chalk Jayhawk, Danny. By the way, Kansas is about to enter the Super Regional Final, maybe going to the College World Series for the first time ever.
Oh my goodness, so much excitement there. And also I've been seeing so many highlights from the women's softball College World Series, which is also exciting. And it shows those investments at the youth sports level for girls within the sport. Okay, so bringing it back, that term, Tristan, is called cause marketing. And that where you're doing something for the betterment, but looking at from the marketing aspect, you want to get that early point of entry with your consumer. So targeting, it's such you could say 3-year-olds, probably more for the parents that they want that Disney Plus subscription fee from that model. But, it is that feel-good story and makes it exciting because you do want sports to be access for everyone. And I love to see that cause marketing into effect. And it hits my household too. Having a 3 and an almost 5-year-old, I'll definitely be filling that out. But another cool thing that Disney, also you see it with Nickelodeon, you see it on NBC, is that they're marketing towards sports, towards youth sports from the broadcast side too, within media. And they're doing those alternative broadcasts with, Disney has done a lot where I think the last, I know that they did a Toy Story broadcast and a Monsters Inc. They've done like the Pixar, where it's the alternative broadcast. Of course, Nickelodeon has expanded heavily with their programming towards kids, especially on the football side too, and just cool ways of how these major broadcasts and legacy media are connecting with youth sports to get that point of entry, but then also making sports fun again.
Well, in the end, Danny, as you know, I co-wrote a book called Just Let Them Play, guiding parents, coaches, and athletes through youth sports. And the whole idea with our book is to make sports fun again. And my whole big issue with all this is the money that's gotten involved with this has ruined the fun for so many kids, because you've got these big companies investing all this money in it. There's the potential, the pressure to win, the pressure to get better, instead of enjoying the experience. And that, to me, my concern is, as you and I've talked before, is that so many kids drop out. A, they don't have money to be on these teams, traveling, going all these places. And B, the fun is gone. And how much of that is because of all this money that's put in and the expectations that are placed on these teams to win?
Well, I think from the PE standpoint, what investors, the opportunities that they're seeing is the ability to monetize and optimize. You saw private equity, the trend within healthcare, into taking small operations and almost a national platform. And that's where I think that is the point of entry on the youth sports side. We're seeing it in baseball and in softball because of their tournament structure. Also, soccer, volleyball, and any sport that really has that strong club ecosystem. But, it's not just tournaments and at the club level, but you're looking at the infrastructure surrounding youth sports, facilities, coaching and training, technology platform. And that's something that I'm really poised and sort of story that I'm going to be following is on the media side. You're seeing all these subscription models of, how to watch streaming, how to help with scheduling, Of course, that for highlights, I think that is. And with the rise of AI, how is AI going to affect youth sports? I mean, how much, like, I guess, robot empires? I don't know if we'll get to that point. But where I think
I think we're on the path for that. Robot umpires. I really do. At the major league level, and that'll go all the way down to the youth sport level.
And it will, and how quickly will we see that? Will be sort of a question. You talk about, like, I could see a Sandlot sequel of the team taking on robot umpires would be a good storyline, and maybe the movie could be written by AI. I don't know, but I really think from the media side that we're going to see more access with AI and the opportunities that it does open up. That's sort of how we see all these alternative broadcasts going back to what Disney is doing when they do those kid-centered broadcasts. I was a producer at NBC Sports for 15 years, and I worked on Spanish language broadcasts. Let's see, gambling, which was always sort of a fun one to do. But a lot of those were really expensive and very production heavy to do those alternative broadcasts. But now you're able to do them so quickly because AI has automated a lot of that back end. So I definitely think when you look at youth sports disruption and changes that we will see, it's going to be more on the media side and the opportunity there to make the watching more accessible for grandparents, family members, and then definitely from the recruiting angle to have those highlights and that video quality.
I'm sports psychologist Dr. Andrew Jacobs. My co-host is Danni Wysocki, professor at the University of Michigan. We're doing our second live video broadcast today. If you have a question or comment for us, we'd love to hear from you. Our phone number is 913-3810-810. 913-3810-810. We're on Sports Radio 810 WHB. You can also check us out on 810WHB.com. Love to hear from you. We're talking about private equity in sports. We're talking about the issues going on, especially with youth sports today. Love to hear from you. We'll come back from this break and talk more with Danni about this subject. Sports Radio 810 WHB here in Kansas City. And joining me is my co-host, Danni Wysocki from up in Michigan, where it's a beautiful day up there, but it's not here, Danni. It's going to rain. So whatever outside activities are going to go on today aren't going to happen here because it's going to be pouring here pretty soon in beautiful Kansas City. Now, this is our second live broadcast, and we're hopefully going to be doing a lot more from this point on. And youth sports, as you know, is my passion. It's something that I've very much talked about forever on this show. The 35 years I've been on radio, it's been a topic I've talked about forever. The whole issue of money and youth sports, what I've mentioned many times, money's ruined youth sports. I'm probably more than twice your age. You're a very young lady, and at 71, when I grew up, we just went up to the graveyard and the schoolyard and played, or we just shoot baskets on the driveway. There weren't all these youth sport teams until I remember, as I've shared many times in this show, when I was in 6th grade is when some of the youth baseball teams started up. Now you've got youth sports is it's a multi-billion-dollar business. You've got teams for 4-year-olds. Here in Kansas City, there's a soccer organization that has promoted tournaments for 2-year-olds. Okay. I have a 2-year-old granddaughter. There's no way she's gonna be able to play soccer. I mean, and you've got these 2 young daughters. It's gotten to the point now where everything's about money with youth sports. And the good part about it is that it's giving kids accessibility to do stuff. But the bad part about it is where I come from, my perspective, it's the whole thing about winning and beating people has gotten so obsessed instead of the fun's gone out of it. And how does that play into the role of what we're talking about here?
Well, it's funny because, yes, having a 3 and a 4-year-old, we have friends whose kids are already on travel teams. We have been approached at our daughters competing on competition and those travel teams. So,
and of course, you signed them up right away, right? You were like, yes, let's do it.
No, I mean, we're not there yet. My immigrant husband is very, if there's an academic competition team, he would be all for that, I think, and I would have to pull the reins back on him from that perspective. But no, I get it there. I think from the counter side, I mean, we have talked, and that's like the great thing is our conversations are so serendipitous. And, such rooted in values and sort of what I see. And that's where I think I come from the marketing side with that ultra consumerism on steroids and sort of why we're seeing it, that I approach it sort of from a different lens as a parent, where I'm like, okay, what's the alternative? What's the motivation here? But at the same time, I want to rally for the parents. As a young parent, I understand why parents are so want the best for their kids and are going to sign their kids up for travel teams at 3, 4 years old. Because I just want to, give that voice and the counter perspective is one we have talked is that parents, our expectations are so busy and everything. You got to eat clean, the technology on the academic side, signing everyone up. But, we don't have time to waste on programs that are going to be expensive anyway, and the training and the coaching isn't there. And it's not to say that you want your kid to be a future World Cup player at the age of 2 that you're starting it there, but hey, you want to surround them within a good environment.
Let me interrupt you really quick because in my book we started off with a letter I got from a dad who talked all about his son, how his son was, I think, about 12, and he could do all these things, and how great he was at all these things, and where's he going to go? Okay, how far can he go with all these things? I'm like, you don't know. At age, first of all, the kids who are really good at 7 and 8 may not be that good at 9 and 10 because they may be passed over. Maybe they were bigger. I know my oldest son, Jonathan, who is almost 6 feet tall now as an adult in his mid-30s, when he was 12, he played on a competitive baseball team, just a local competitive team. Around here, they went down to Wichita for a couple tournaments, but other than that, it was here. And we played a team out in Baldwin, Kansas, which is not that far away from here, Kansas City, about 20, 30 miles. Jonathan got to first base because he always walked. He wouldn't swing the bat. He says, Dad, I can walk and get on base more than I can when I hit the ball. So, which is pretty funny because Joe Carter's son was on the team. Joe hit the game-winning home run for the Blue Jays in the 93 World Series. And Joe said, Andy, why doesn't Jono swing the bat? I said, ask him. So Jonathan says, Mr. Carter, because I can walk and get on base all the time. Anyway, that's why my son's my son. Anyway, but he got to first base, and the kid on the other team was over 6 feet tall. And, there's such an age disparity that wait till your daughters get to be that age. There's such a big change. And what we see is the competitiveness for a lot of these kids. Well, that kid who was 6 feet tall, he may have gone on he might be playing professional sports for all I know. My son grew, ended up playing for a while, and ended up stopping, because he got into academics. The pressures that I'm seeing today on youth sports are to get your kids signed up early, and this is where all the money comes in. You got to start taking private lessons. You have to start getting private coaching because that's going to help you get better at 7 and 8 years of age. And now we're seeing this influx of sports injuries for kids at 11 and 12. There are boys having Tommy John surgery at age 12. Why is that? Because of the competitiveness, the pressure to have to win. And all this is where the money comes in, right? Do you agree with that?
Well, it's funny you talk about the disparity at age 12 that you're going to see. We're seeing that at the college level too, with the transfer portal, with the extended window, that you're seeing 24, 25-year-olds playing at the college level against 18-year-olds.
Yeah, and it's not fair. It's not fair. Go on.
And I think that is one extreme. Of course, there are parents who think that their 4-year-old is going to go to the major leagues when, at that age and are pushing them for that specialization and private lessons and coaching. But you also want to think, too, I think, in the angle of why you're seeing such a push to club sports at a young age is that volunteer burden. Is the volunteer burden of, and you're looking at the demands of corporate America and a work schedule, is that no longer can a dad coach Little League, no longer rec basketball, soccer, and what the expectations are, that now you're saying, hey, if you do have a child who's really passionate about a certain sport and maybe the volunteer, organization isn't there at the local level, that, yeah, you are going to be more motivated to go to a club team. And I think that's unfortunately, the reality of it.
Yeah, Tristan's going to jump in here.
Another example of someone getting the limelight a little too early might be Baby Gronk. If you remember towards the end of Rob Gronkowski's NFL career, the rapid rise of the young influencer Baby Gronk, he has since fallen off because he was single-digit ages when he came onto the scene, and now he's in middle school traveling to different football camps, and now he's turning into more of an influencer than an athlete. So it's an interesting take there.
Danny, we're on social media right now. And obviously social media has tremendous benefits, but it also has so many negatives. I've talked about this forever on this show, where anybody can say anything on social media about anybody without knowing them. When I worked with Kansas City Royals from 2008 to 2011, social media didn't exist as it does today. And I recall one player who got letters every day from a fan who would draw sketch pictures of him on the TV as he's batting. And he had like 20 of these. He brought in one day to show. He says, Doc, he called me his brain coach. Brain coach, I got to show you this. I love that term, by the way. And I've even got a bat from him to my brain coach. And anyway, brought in these sketches. This guy did of him on TV about why his stance was off. And can you imagine that today, what people would be doing on social media with that? And so the idea that sports has taken over so many things yet, and getting to the point with kids, like I'm saying, youth sports should be about having fun, going out and learning something, enjoying it. You're going to succeed, you're going to fail. Okay. But that's okay. But to so many people, no, failure is wrong. Losing is bad. And that's where we've got to sign up for private lessons. We've got to get private tutoring. We have to send to a nutritionist, a sports psychologist at 10 years of age to figure this stuff out. This is where the whole money, from my perspective, money's ruined youth sports.
And to bring it back to the social media angle right now is now young athletes can create and generate such a following on social and use their platform. Again, I love it. I feel like sometimes, Doc, when we talk, it's the devil and the angel. You are the angel. You are caring about the integrity and the values and the human confidence of that, and I'm like, oh, it's all about the money. I'm like I'm the double side angle.
Excuse me, but you've got two young daughters. Okay, I mean, I've got multiple grandchildren. Okay, it's a different situation. I mean, you're coming at it from a whole different angle than where I am, and your angle. Go ahead.
Well, when I talk to you, yes, the mom in me is always going to see through. But when we talk about sort of these stories with PE and youth sports and participation, I'm always feeling the professor in me and the sports media junkie is going to come out of where the marketing dollars is and where it comes from a business perspective. And so many of these athletes have been able to create and generate a brand at such a young age. And that has changed the sports industry and turned it upside down as a whole. That's why we have NIL. That's why we have athletes staying at the college level longer. That's why we have media values and media rights skyrocketing when it comes to certainly at the college level, but that trickle down effect from youth sports and these media platforms being centered around the streaming and the broadcast of youth sports is because you do have excellent talent and people able to watch and see and connect with these athletes. And of course, there needs to be protections in place. Of course, you worry about the maturity of these athletes and to be given such a big platform. But you also look at the, no longer do they have to be scared and go through life that they're not going to be able to generate money and a profit until they are able to go professional, and that whether it's leagues or schools to be making money off of them, I'm talking more at the college level and high school level at some extent. But now social media has put the power back into the athletes.
Well, and to me, that's been an excellent way to go with this. But the problem still is how money plays such a big role here. And, with youth sports now, what I'm seeing is so many kids are getting involved at younger ages, which is great for the physical fitness perspective, right? Your daughters, you want them to be to be healthy, work out and all that. And youth sports is great for that type of stuff. But here's my question, Danny, to you. Okay. The word fun is what sports should be about at the youth level. Even up to high school. I know when should winning be involved? In my opinion, about 8th grade. When kids are about 13 or 14, that's when the score should start to matter. That's when the results should start to matter a little bit in terms of what you're doing. But up to that point, it shouldn't matter. But unfortunately, what we're seeing is all this money that's gotten involved and all these traveling teams at 7 and 8 and all this pressure to win psychologically, emotionally hurts a lot of kids. And it causes, that's why we see on social media every week a story, well, not one story, multiple stories, these wacko situations at youth sports events. and
often involving the parents.
Yes. Not the kid. I mean, here's this one young boy, okay, who's 11 or excuse me, 12 years old on an 11 and under team. Now, maybe he turned 12, okay, during the year, but he wants to throw the ball into the other dugout and hit one of those kids. And the dad's like, well, there'll be consequences for it. Really? Yeah, no, you as a dad, you say, no, you're out of the game. No, you can't even think about that. Well, that league, God bless him, they banned the guy for life from coaching because he could have maimed somebody. Where does that come from? It's about winning. And where's the winning, the desire to win? Because of the money that's involved. Well, we get trophies, we get plaques, we get, notoriety, right? And this is where the money whole aspect, even though the benefits it gives you sports is there, the negatives are so strong.
And I guess this is where I'm interested from the psychology aspect is take the crazy parents out of it.
I'd like to take crazy parents out of it, but unfortunately they're all over the place.
Oh, yeah, yes, and I see that outside of sports and in other areas of parenting. But I guess my question for you and what I want to learn as a young parent is how to teach your children failure, learning to overcome adversity at a healthy level. What is the best way to approach that?
Well, the easy answer for me is to get my book and read the chapter that says embracing failure can lead to fun, because but being serious, but I'll be serious that we talk about it. You're going to fail. It's okay. It's not bad. It's not a negative thing. It's about learning and growing. I talk to my clients all the time, Danny. Let me ask you this question. What's the greatest individual performance in the NCAA men's championship basketball game? You know who did that? What player had the best starting player had the best stats ever in that championship game?
No, who was it?
Bill Walton. Okay. He missed one shot. 21 for 22 or 22 for 23. I believe it was early 1970s, but he missed a shot. He didn't make all of them. Okay. Rarely. I'll tell you a story. Okay. I have a PhD, as you know, and I did my doctoral dissertation. If you're listening, a doctoral dissertation is a big research project you do to get your PhD. Because of my family's involvement with horse racing, my great uncle, Hearst Jacobs, who was one of my role models growing up, was the winningest trainer in horse racing when he died in 1970. He won 3,596 races. Of course, yesterday was the Belmont, and his daughter, my cousin Patrice, owned a firm who won the Triple Crown in 1978. I got to see a firm run 6 times in person. It was the greatest thing I ever got to experience. And because of their involvement, I did my doctoral dissertation on jockeys. Okay. The great part about that, Danny, I was taller than all of them. First time in my life, I was taller than everybody was around. And you're supposed to laugh at that. Anyway, so the fact of the matter was, I gave them this personality test. And the greatest jockey of all time was in my study. And he rode my cousin's horses. And so I asked, when I went over got his test results, he wanted to see them. And they came out terribly. His concentration skills, his personality, everything was awful. And I went and sat down with him and I said, I don't understand this. This says you get stressed and overloaded, your confidence is low, you're real negative, you're a worrier. He goes, no, that's exactly right. And I said, really? Why is that? He goes, because if I ride 5 races in a day, racetrack, you could have 10 or 11 races. If I ride 5 races, I expect to win all. If I win 4 and I lost the 5th, I'm a loser. And that really struck me. And that's something I share with my client. Here's the guy who was the best jockey of all time at that point. But he was such a perfectionist, he had to win all the time. All right. And that came from his upbringing. He was expected to always win. Now, what's good about that is that he challenged himself and pushed himself. What's bad about that was he was always beating himself up. So where's the balance at? You're going to lose. You're going to fail. You're going to strike out. You're going to miss a shot. You're going to miss a putt. You're going to double fault. You're going to, come in last in a race. To me, it's what do you learn about yourself? How do you grow and get better? Because Because I ask my clients, Danny, three questions: define winning, define losing, define self-confidence. What do you think most of them say their definition of winning is? What do you think?
Not messing up, winning.
Coming in first. What do you think their definition of losing is?
Not coming in first.
Yeah. And what's their definition of self-confidence?
Coming in first.
Believing in yourself. To me, self-confidence is the ability to believe in yourself. My definition of winning, Danny, did I do the best I could today? If you have 500 people running a road race and all 500 people run best times, to me, they're all winners. One person is going to come in first place, right? But if they all run their best times, they all won. They got something out of it. Now, if you came in dead last, but you still ran your best time, how can you grow from that? Losing is about quitting, giving up, not trying, falling apart. And all that comes from the confidence. And that's where the foundation of this comes from youth sports. The foundation from this comes from what you learn. So we're going to go to our next break now. And I want to come back and get your thoughts on all this, because as a young mother, as someone who's so intelligent, you're a professor, you've been in sports forever, you've done all this stuff with it, you understand this stuff. I want to get your thoughts, how you're going to deal with that with your daughters and where we go from here. I'm sports psychologist Dr. Andrew Jacobs. My co-host Danny Wysocki is with me. We're talking about youth sports. We're talking about money in sports. We're on the Leader in Sports, Sports Radio 810 WHB. Good morning, everybody. I'm sports psychologist Dr. Andrew Jacobs. This is the Sports Psychology Hour from our flagship station, Sports Radio 810 WHB here in Kansas City. My co-host is Danny Wysocki up in Michigan, which is a beautiful day up there, ready to go to a baseball game with her daughters and her husband. I'm jealous of that because I'm going to watch it rain, Danny. Anyway, we're talking about money in sports. We're talking about youth sports. And as we went to our break, I had some questions for you, okay, with your daughters about winning and losing and getting involved in all these sporting activities. What are you going to do about teaching them about failing and losing and making mistakes? How are you going to deal with that as a mother and as someone who's so knowledgeable in the world of sports?
Well, as the question and what we were talking about just before break, I just sat on it for a moment because I'm hyper aware of a mom, but also a girl mom and the expectations put on young women within society, and also, the changing aspects of it, and the more adversity that young women are also faced. I'm also hyper aware too of the differences between boys and girls. My sister has 3 boys, and sort of looking at how her household, and the everyday life of it compared to what my girls are interested in. My husband and I go back and forth because we really want our almost 5-year-old to play a team sport. She's young. She's still young too. And I'm aware of that, but she's also very girly, so she loves dance, ice skating, gymnastics, all those sports. And we can't get her to want to do soccer or baseball, even when her friends are doing it, or her cousins as well too. But she does sometimes will say like, well, I don't want to lose mommy. I don't want to do that. And, to say like, okay, she's still young. We know that it's something that we do want to do is have her try a team sport. But she's already so consciously aware, even at 4-year-olds, hey, I don't want to lose.
Well, wait, let me jump in. Let me jump in. Where did that come from a 4-year-old say, I don't want to lose? Where did that come from?
I think probably, what it is kids learn from other kids, and they're very observant. So we go and we watch all of her cousins' games, and she's innately aware of one of. I'm not putting it on blame of any of her, of her cousins who are only 6, 7 years old, only a few years older than her. But it is crazy, how attuned kids are even at a young age of that winning and losing. So, Doc, my question for you, turning the tables here, is, do you notice any differences between girls and boys, when they're faced with these adversity? And how do kids learn winning and losing at such a young age?
Well, it comes from a variety of places. First of all, boys and girls. Yeah, boys are going to be typically a little more upset about it than girls, but not always. I mean, at this point now, with the rise of women's sports, especially the WNBA and the NWSL. I was the Kansas City current team psychologist for several years. We're seeing the competitiveness in girls sports rising to a level that it never has been before. We didn't see all this national coverage of women's sports like we are now, which is awesome. And I think it's long overdue. Okay. And so the winning and losing stuff starts to come in for women at the professional level, and it filters down. So there's some of that. But in the end, I still think it comes down to parents. Okay. I still think it comes down to how you talk about winning and losing, how you emphasize that, if we're going to play a sport, let's learn and grow and have fun. If you make a mistake, that's okay. You're going to make a mistake. If you make a great play, that's okay. That's okay too. But you don't. One of the problems, Danny, I found with so many of the young people I've seen over the years in my office is when, as a younger person, they lost or they failed, their parents would get upset at them, or their coaches would get upset at them. And rather than saying, this is a great learning moment, this is a great way to get better, they're told about how awful they were, how bad they were, what was wrong with them. And consequently, then that's where some of these confidence issues go. So rather than being told, hey, it's okay, it's going to happen, but let's learn from that, they're told how bad it is. I just had a young man in my office this week who's going to be a freshman in high school. He's an athlete. Okay. And one of the issues which we've addressed and worked on was with his dad. Okay. When he was younger, playing soccer and baseball, when he made mistakes in the car ride home, the dad would ream him about why he made those mistakes. I'm like, when did you start doing that? And the dad said, well, when he was about 6 or 7. Well, no wonder he's got a confidence issue. So I think you have to encourage kids at a younger age that it should be about fun. If you miss I know my younger son, Gregory, I'll give you this example, Dana, and you jump in before we wrap up. Gregory, his first soccer game was in kindergarten. It was a co-ed game, 3-on-3 game. I got to the game just in time to watch him play because I came from a wedding. He scored 6 goals, 3 for his team and 3 for the other. And you know what? He was having fun. I didn't get mad at him because he scored goals for the other team. I said, hey, Dad, I scored again. It was about fun. Fun is going out of youth sports because of the influx of money and winning and results and all that. Let me get your thoughts before we wrap up.
I'll go back to who I am at my core, and that's, yes, a mom, I would say, but also a sports media junkie professional. That's the essence of my career. And going back to media, you mentioned the representation and seeing women compete at the highest level. You're going back to we're on the eve of the World Cup, and we're going to see the best soccer, football athletes here on home soil in America. And what that's going to do to the sport, and seeing the talent there, that representation matters. And now we are at a point within our media that at every level and at every sport, every gender, that you're able to see highly competitive, highly talented athletes competing within their sport, and how that's going to motivate young players, and how that's going to motivate our youth, and what that's going to bring. So I think that it's an exciting time. Women, soccer, at every level, seeing high school, college, seeing such talented athletes and motivating the future generation.
Yeah, we've got the NBA and NHL finals about to happen, and so one of the teams is going to win, one's going to lose, but the team that lost are still winners from so many perspectives. Danny Wysocki, I cannot thank you enough for doing this show with me. I look forward to doing it again and do many more. Your comments and your insight is so valuable, and because I think the flow we're having here is so good, I cannot thank you enough for joining us. I want you to enjoy the baseball game today. I hope you catch a foul ball, by the way. And people want to get a hold of you. How can they reach you, Danny?
Thanks so much, Chuck. Always a pleasure. I think the best way, find me on LinkedIn, Twitter a little bit if you want to hear washed up Red Wings hockey opinion. So, or of course, sports media. I'm always looking to talk sports media because all roads in sports lead through media.
There you go. Danny Wysocki, you have a great day, my friend. Thanks for joining me today, as always. Appreciate it. I'm sports psychologist Dr. Andrew Jacobs. You want to get a hold of me several ways. My email is drj@winnersunlimited.com. My website is winnersunlimited.com. If you want to schedule an appointment, give me a call to give a speech or talk. My office number is 816-561-5556. Take care, stay safe, and we'll talk to you next Sunday here on the Leader in Sports, Sports Radio 810 WHB.